And as all of you working within social media know, every single day there's thousands of comments that are being posted across companies' ads on social media as well as their accounts. And just looking at the brands that are attending Social Media Week New York today, and then the time frame for this session, during this time, you'll combined have received over 10,000 comments across different platforms and your campaigns. And looking at all this very high engagement and thinking about what type of comments are being posted and what kind of feedback is being given, we had a look especially at beauty brands, and we found that around 5 to 10% of the engagement being posted, especially on Facebook and Instagram ads, is actually people asking questions about the product and how they can get it, or which colors it comes in, or what the shipping policy is. And of course, it's important to have customer service in place answering these questions. But at the same time, it's also very interesting for marketers and people that are doing the content and running the ads to as well pay attention to see that what are the most asked questions and how can those questions be incorporated already in the actual ad campaign to give people faster the answers they want, as people are, of course, more impatient today than ever before. If you're a global brand or you're running ads at scale, most likely at some point in time a mistake will happen, and perhaps you'll be targeting an audience in France and your copy will be in German, or maybe you're running you have a coupon code that doesn't work, or you're promoting a product that doesn't any longer exist. And this is something that happens quite often for big brands. And the good news is that social media usually pays attention, and they very quickly will tell you about this. And then, of course, the bad news is that social media pays a lot of attention and they'll tell you about it. And what we found is that typically when there is a technical issue with an ad or when there is something wrong, quite quickly the negative sentiment on that ad surpasses 50%, which really means that people tend to pay attention, and quite often they really want to see the creative that is being shown to them, and kind of listening to that can help as well fix mistakes quickly. And then when it comes to all the people in the room that are working with marketing and putting up campaigns and thinking about the creative, of course, there's the constant thought that what are we going to do next and what would resonate well with our audience. And we recently actually did a study of the fast food industry and the ads that they're running. And we found that over 20% of the comments these brands get on their ads, it's actually about the creative. And people are saying that, hey, I wish you guys would show, for example, how the food is made. Or they're commenting about the ad, or they're saying that this doesn't resonate well with me because I don't have a car, or other reasons as well. So what we're seeing is that, of course, depending on in which team and what kind of unit you're working, you might be tracking the website conversions, or maybe you're tracking the reach or the engagement. But quite often these metrics are quantitative, which means that you know what the results are, what they aren't, but you don't know why. So quite often consumers and your audience they're giving this feedback, and they're doing it directly on your social accounts. And then the question is, of course, that how well can you as a brand kind of listen to this, and how well can you then adjust your campaigns to match what people want. And speaking, of course, about engagement to a room full of social media professionals, we can't not mention, of course, spam and trolling, as that's kind of something that a necessary evil that every single person on social media has to deal with. And despite, Facebook and Instagram, they've been doing a lot of work to remove this kind of spam from the platforms. But at the same time, still today, we're seeing that approximately 10% of all the engagement that beauty brands receive, it's actually spam or self-promotion or some form of trolling. And this is also something that we're going to be discussing with Christina today. And then when it comes to this type of make money scam, it's of course a no-brainer that you want that removed from your brand accounts and ads, and you don't want it there. But one of the key discussion topics amongst many brands, especially during the past year, is also that where should you draw the line, especially when it comes to what is hate speech and what is just someone, you know, expressing their opinion, and what is too high profanity and what is acceptable profanity. And these are all really hard questions, and it of course depends on who you're targeting, what your audience is, and what your brand values are, and how far you want to go to protect your fans from harmful content. So this is, of course, there's no easy answer to this, and this is something that has to be discussed on an ongoing basis. But looking at all the kind of user engagement and all the comments and everything that's being said and all the feedback being given, the great thing about social media is, of course, that things are happening very fast. And the comments that are being posted, they're also immediately public, which means that brands can immediately you know, listen to what people are saying and adapt accordingly. But at the same time, they also require immediate attention. And some of the brands that seem to be doing the best on social media are also the ones that can really close that feedback loop, reacting very fast, but also taking really quickly action to what people are saying and adjusting accordingly. But then, of course, I know what you all are thinking. You're thinking that how can you know, there's thousands of interactions, there's so much going on. Perhaps you're a global brand, it's a lot of different languages and so on, that, you know, this would require a big team and a lot of resources. And then perhaps you're thinking this, I mean, you're probably doing other stuff as well, and you might not really have, you know, the resources needed to go through every single interaction. And that's really what our company, BrandBastion, was also, these were the kind of questions we were thinking about 5 years ago when we started the company. And then really what we wanted to do is bring a solution that would help brands manage the engagement they're receiving, on their behalf, taking actions like removing harmful content like spam or hate speech, and also issuing alerts if there's something wrong with an ad, or if an audience is having a reaction that they're feeling that something is offensive or so on. And also issuing responses to inquiries like, where can I get this from, how much is this? And then as well providing really insights like, what is the feedback that is being said across your campaigns, so that brands can react. And this is something that's something that we do in real time, 24/7 in 43 languages across multiple platforms. And we're going to be talking more about with Christina about successful brands and how brands have been able to listen closely and also adapt their strategies based on consumer feedback. And before we dive into that, I'd also like to share just 2 examples from case studies about brands that have been able to drive great results by efficiently managing the engagement they receive. And in the first one, it's actually an e-commerce company that they were able to drive 24% increase in website conversions from their Facebook ads when they were responding to every single question where someone was asking, where can I get this from? How much is this? What's your shipping policy? And the reason why they were able to do this is that it wasn't only the people that were asking questions that they were able to kind of push to actually become a customer, but also the thousands of or even millions of other people that were seeing their ads saw that this company offers great customer service. They're listening to the consumers, which kind of encouraged them as well to make a purchase. And in the second case study, there actually a brand was able to increase their positive user sentiment by over 269% when they were removing trolling, they were removing any kind of hate speech, and they were also offering customers speedy responses to their questions. And the way, of course, social media works is that it's an avalanche. So the more kind of positive comments you get, the more you're going to as well be getting. So everything kind of escalates very quickly, which is also why the results of like effective engagement management can be can quite quickly really pick up speed and be very, very strong. And yeah, so then to the part that everyone's been waiting for. So Christina, you have over a decade worth of experience just working with brands and helping them grow on social media and with marketing. Could you please tell us a bit about your career so far, and as well about how you've seen kind of the industry evolving?
Sure. I started off on the agency side, working at a creative agency and developing strategies. My first beauty brand I worked on was Elizabeth Arden. You know, 10 years ago, that was a very different story. Social was very different. We weren't having to think about every day how we speak to consumers. It was more so when you launch something, how are we going to present it to consumers, move them down the funnel, and have those key points that you speak to them in, not necessarily how do we manage them every single day. Worked on Elizabeth Arden and then moved to New York to work on Christian Dior, and then worked across the LVMH portfolio on a lot of their beauty brands like Makeup Forever and Benefit. And then ultimately ended up at MAC as the director of new media, which is social. And when I started there, you know, our Instagram had about 1.4 million followers. We were posting on average 1.7 times a week. And those posts were very much so, here is the beauty shot of whatever we're launching, and here is the product shot of whatever we're launching. And you know, with about 2 launches per week on average, we tried to space that out a little bit. But you know, eventually just having those shots wasn't enough. It wasn't building a community. So at MAC, what we really did over the past 4 years is figure out how to build a community where it wasn't just MAC pushing out information to consumers and images and saying, like this, it's cool, aspire to it, but really listening to them and figuring out what inspires you and having a conversation and building a community. So I think in terms of beauty, that's something that over the past 10 years, instead of just telling people like, get this product or like this color, this is what it is, and pushing things out, it's much more of a conversation where, and you know, everybody says this, but like the consumer really is leading that, and we're there to listen and as a brand have a perspective on what we stand for as a brand and what we think is important and how we can interact with that consumer in that space. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And what about thinking back, what would you say has been so far maybe the 3 most successful social media campaigns that you've been involved with or that you've run? And if you could tell us a bit about kind of how you've gotten the idea for the campaign and as well how things went.
So I think in terms of a specific campaign, something that we did at MAC, it was 2 years ago, was a campaign called MAC Mix Mash. It was a lip campaign where we realized that you know, at MAC we kind of have 2 audiences. You have your general consumer and then you have your makeup artists, and they kind of blend a little bit, but we wanted to see what's happening with our makeup artists who are on the front lines every day, and where is that line melding with what our consumers come to us for, what they're interested in. And one of the things we realized is that our makeup artists never just wore one lipstick color. It was be like, what's your favorite color? And they would be like, oh, Ruby Woo, but like, I actually use a brick liner because I like it to be a little bit deeper, or everybody kind of had their secret sauce. And you know, as a consumer, a lot of the time you're like, oh, just grab the lipstick, put it on. Like, I'm not a creative makeup artist, so I'm just gonna grab the one lip gloss or something. But we realized there was this opportunity to talk about what our makeup artists were doing and bring that to consumers to kind of like customize their color. And when you work at a brand like MAC, which is a color company, there's like the options are limitless. So what we wanted to do was activate our artists. And so we started MAC Mix Mash. And it was, how do you mix, how do you mash up your lipsticks, your lip glosses? Some people were, you know, putting on a matte lipstick, but then would put like a glitter over it. So, you know, they have their secrets, it's gonna stay longer. So we launched this campaign. We asked them to use the hashtag. We had 25,000 artists globally. So I like to call it our internal influencer network. And asked them to start using it, and we saw great success. It propelled our users at that point, I believe, from about 7 million followers on Instagram to about 8 in a pretty quick time frame. We saw a big increase just because we were asking our artists to participate, and they knew they were getting regrammed. It really became a community effort. People were excited to see what products other people were mixing, and then we were able to take that content and use it across a variety of places, whether, you know, in our e-commerce, online, events, and it just got people really excited. So although that wasn't tied to a specific launch, I thought it was a really beautiful way to get our artists excited about the brand and our consumers. People were trying it in store, so it really just, and continues to be used. I think there's 40,000 uses of the hashtag still, so it continues to grow. Another campaign that I really love, and I don't know if I can call it a campaign, but more so an always-on effort, was our Mac Artist Challenge. That was something that we developed when we realized we only had a couple pieces of content per week. And we were like, we're getting, there's a lot of other brands, Anastasia Beverly Hills, that is really growing in social. What's the Mac version of that? And how do we activate our own artists? So we came up with this idea, Mac Artist Challenge, and every month we put out a note to our artists around the globe. Markets could customize if they had launches that were coming later or specific things that they needed to drill up. Obviously Korea has a different beauty aesthetic versus North America. And so this Mac Artist Challenge, which, gosh, I haven't even checked how many it has now, but I think it's like over 200,000 uses, just continues to grow insanely. And we said, okay, so every month, here's what is on our marketing calendar. Here's what we're going to be talking about socially. Here's seasonally what we're doing. And those artists went ahead and posted about it. So it creates a nice groundswell internally. And then it also excites our artists that they feel closer and more connected to what the brand is doing globally and locally. And a lot of these artists are influencers in their own right, have followers, and so they're posting that content and spreading that. So I would say those are our two best examples of what we've done at Mac. And then I'm guessing we'll talk about Aaliyah, but we can save that for later, but that's a good one too.
Yeah, those are fantastic examples. And then thinking about other brands, then how, when it comes to finding those influencers and kind of tapping into it, whether it's people that are working already with your company or just finding new ones, do you have any kind of advice or any kind of guidance to give to other professionals about what they should be thinking about when finding influencers, and also perhaps as well what one can do if, for example, your audience has a negative reaction to the influencers that you pick?
Yes, that's terrible. I hate it when that happens. And it's not even like influencers that you pick with necessarily to partner with. Sometimes you regram the wrong person and everybody's up in arms and you have to like slowly backtrack. So I think with influencers, the most important thing is to not just go with like who has the biggest following or like who do I really like personally, but who, if I look at their feed and I look at their audience, has something that aligns with whatever it is that we're trying to do. So, at Mac, there's 90 collections a year. There's a huge amount of volume. Somebody that is going to buy, your like sparkly lip gloss is not the same person that's necessarily going to buy your mascara. They're two different things. And so I think really when you're thinking about what influencer do I need, looking at people that already use similar products, that post things that have like at least somewhat of a similar brand aesthetic, that don't feel like a complete departure. Sometimes with like our Next to Nothing launch, it was a very light skin color that was like very thin and really let true skin shine through, not what you would normally think for MAC. And so our typical like drag queens, heavy foundation, people were not going to work for that. So we had to go outside that and think, okay, this is more lifestyle. Who is the right person for this? So thinking about what is the product I'm trying to launch? What is it going to look like in the world? Who are the people we think are going to use this? And then finding the influencers that connect with that product and that connect with like what your expectation is for that launch. And then of course, everybody wants to go for those big influencers, and of course at MAC, we certainly do use, the Desis and those big influencers, but we also go ahead and look at smaller micro-influencers. There's a lot of influencers that might just have 5,000 followers, but those people are loyal and they want to know everything that they have on. So I think being able to identify, and not being afraid of, well, they don't have the most followers, but maybe their followers are really engaged, or maybe they're just so right for this that you can connect them with the brand and help propel them as well. I think a lot of the influencers that we work with think of us as partners. So when we have a launch, instead of saying we want 3 things that look like this and this is exactly what it needs to say, we are quite loose in saying here's what we're doing as a brand. We love these things that you've done. Something in between, your call. And I think it empowers them as well and makes them want to do more. Sometimes we'll ask for 1 post and we end up getting 5 posts, few stories, and we're blown away by how excited they are just to partner.
Yeah, absolutely. And then in the kind of event where a proportion or even a majority of your followers would react negatively to a regram or to an influencer, what do you think a brand should do, or what are the kind of questions a brand should ask themselves if that happens and if that's the feedback that they receive?
Well, that's what you guys help us with. But I think just understanding like why your audience isn't, like why they're responding the way they are. And like going back and really, we had something, I won't name names, but we posted a regram and a lot of our artists were very upset about it. And we had to really pedal it back and understand, okay, this is why, this is the kind of thing that like this influencer has done that has made them unhappy that we are supporting them. And, sometimes you do have to issue an apology. Sometimes you do have to archive that post and just take it out of view so that people aren't continuing to blow it up. And sometimes you have to stand by it and say like, at MAC, we say MAC supports all ages, all races, all genders, and we're not going to stand for you guys saying these negative things about this person. So it really depends. I would just say like, really understanding the feedback and looking, like social is perfect. You can see exactly why people are upset. You can see the conversations they're having with other people there. You can see the people that are defending what you've done and just kind of gauge how you need to react from there. But I think like being actively engaged and not just, let's just hope it didn't happen. That's the wrong way.
Yeah, absolutely. And then, so MAC Cosmetics is in June launching the Aaliyah collection, as you also mentioned. And looking at social, it seems like fans can hardly wait for this. So how can brands know what they should be launching and what they should be doing, and how can you kind of listen to those, that feedback being given, and then how can you as well kind of make sure that the product teams and the different kind of players within the company, that they're also kind of closely involved in that process?
Yeah. So MAC for Aaliyah was similar to what happened with Selena. There was a petition that went up. It got over 25,000 signatures saying we want this collection. So it became a thing, and BrandBastion can speak to this. Literally every post that went up for a while, people just started commenting, hashtag MAC for Aaliyah, MAC for Aaliyah, MAC for Aaliyah. We were tracking it and we just saw this groundswell, and we were like, after a while, we were like, we're not going to do it, we're not going to do it. And we were like, we can't not do it. So we eventually, there were so many signatures, we eventually decided to do it. We saw the same thing with Selena. There was a huge groundswell. We sold out, within hours. There were lines and lines and lines for people to get the collection. So that really came about through just listening to our consumers, and eventually we couldn't ignore it. They were that loud. And the fans went to her family, they went to her brother got on board, and he was really excited. So I think it's listening to what people want, and social's the right place for that. There's a lot of other great nuggets that we've discovered. Like we saw the matte metallic trend coming from pretty far away, because when we were launching our mattes, people started saying it would be great if this had metallic in it. It would be great if there was some pearl, but still matte. So, that was great for us because we were able to anticipate it. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Yeah. And what about then, like when you're planning ahead, for example, a year's worth of content, or a quarter's worth of content? How much do you think that brands should basically be kind of changing the direction or adapting? And how quickly do you think this needs to happen for a brand to do well? And how much do you think you can kind of stay on track with your original plan?
Yeah. So certainly the marketing calendar is built far out. We know, in April we're going to be talking about skin or whatever that might be. So you plan those out. However, the most important thing in social, and I think this is what has kept MAC growing, is to be nimble and be scrappy. Those polished videos that look beautiful, like they belong on YouTube maybe in ads, they don't belong on Instagram. So one of the things that we've done at MAC, and I think we have the luxury of having 25,000 artists around the globe, and somebody we can run to the Mac Pro store and be like, gosh, guys, we're seeing blue lips everywhere and we don't have any blue lip content. Can we just film something really fast? And pulling it together that day. When Lady Gaga wore that red glitter eye at the Super Bowl, we went to the Mac Pro store that Monday morning and filmed a how-to and put it up that day. on an iPhone. And everybody's like, your budgets must be crazy. No. We just are like totally willing to try and fail and just get something up. Because consumers, there's a little girl sitting in her bedroom filming a how-to and probably not being nearly as perfect as a professional artist, and it's getting a bajillion views. So there's no reason why, as a brand, we can't just do the same thing and get that content up. So I think plan it out, have those ideas, know that in May you're going to talk about lipstick, but then if you see a crazy eye trend come up, don't be afraid to go away from that and just get something up and get whatever it is. Like, we have people in the office, I think half the videos that are on our Instagram feed are just girls on the marketing team. And our stories are also artists in the office or artists at the Powell Street store in San Francisco. So being able to just be a little bit scrappy and nimble and say it doesn't matter where the content comes from if it's good is really important. And not being afraid to deviate from whatever you have planned. Yeah.
Absolutely. And what about then, I mean, MAC Cosmetics is exceptionally highly engaged and you're getting all this feedback and people are telling you what you want. But what about other brands that are maybe starting out or they might not yet have a really loyal fan base? What can they do to really generate or get that feedback or get people, talking to them, get them commenting on their ads and so on?
Yeah, I think what's really important, and people forget this, and I know we did for a while, ask for the engagement, right? Don't be afraid to say, hey guys, what do you think about this? Like, caption this photo. Whatever it might be, ask for it, because consumers see that and they want to participate. So once you get it in front of them, whether it's through paid or organic, ask them to participate and don't be afraid of that. It doesn't look needy, it's engaging. And I think that, in terms of just getting it in front of them, influencers obviously are really important. Identify who has a similar brand aesthetic, get people excited about it, those influencers, and you'll start seeing that organic growth. Put some paid behind it. Sometimes you just need, we like to call it like seed money. You just need like a couple dollars to get something going, and you don't need to put like thousands of dollars behind every post. Just a little bit to get it going, and once that organic conversation starts happening there, it will pick up. Yeah.
And then during, especially 2017, like the whole fake news, hate speech, trolling, those were quite central themes for the year. How do you see that? Or do you see that in any way kind of impacting on the beauty industry? And what are your thoughts around like what beauty brands can, for example, do to kind of take an active role in fighting these kind of negative things happening on social?
So animal testing, period, the end, animal testing. MAC does not test on animals, just want to be clear. But that is something that really, really, for the past couple years has been a thorn in our side with people saying that we do and constantly posting fake pictures. The cat neutering photo that's up everywhere. It's a facility where they're neutering cats to be adopted. It's not an animal testing facility, but it seems to surface up constantly. And it's something that we really battle with. And we brought in BrandBastion because it just got out of control. We couldn't reply to every single post or to every single comment, and it really hurt us. And after, I think it was 24% of the comments on our Instagram page were animal testing comments, and it was completely out of control. And so we brought y'all in, and within a month, I think it dropped to like 7%, and then within a couple months, it was down to like 2% of our comments. And that was just in replying and telling them the truth, saying, we don't test on animals, we don't own animal facilities, learn more here. Here's a link to a website where you can see all of our policies, and we sell in China. So China reserves the right to do that, but we don't. And I think just giving people that information, one, people are like, oh, thank you for telling me that. Okay, thanks. And then also a lot of our followers started standing up for us and saying like, hey, you actually haven't, this isn't true, they don't test. And talking about it and defending the brand themselves. So that even drove it down lower. And I think just being open and honest and having that conversation, like, yes, we do sell in China. This is the policy there. Oh, got it. Okay. And we saw a huge decrease. So fake news is challenging, and animal testing is the marquee of that, but you also see it in like fake reviews and things when people get angry. So there's lots of stuff, but I think just having a conversation and being honest is the best way to deal with that.
Yeah, and being active.
Yeah.
Is key, yeah. And what about then when it comes to like, of course, one of the core themes for the whole Social Media Week New York is also, the machine and technology and how that's kind of changing the landscape. What are your thoughts around, do you think there's certain things, especially thinking about the beauty industry and marketing, where humans will be needed? And then what are the kind of things that you think maybe machines or technology can gradually take over? And,
it's a balance.
Yeah.
I think there will be things that like they can reply to, like, where can I buy this? You can buy this online. Here is a link. Like a person doesn't need to be replying for that.
Yeah.
In terms of beauty, often it's artistry related. So like, wow, that eyeliner is so fierce. How did you get that flick of the cat eye? Well, okay, that's going to need a little bit more explanation. Oh, your eyes are green. You might want to wear purple eyeshadow versus this. So there's some information that that machines will be able to do and should. How do I buy this? Where is this product available? Things that are pretty standard. I do think that in terms of talking about your brand and like having fun with people and engaging with them, that's something that's a little more human. Like people want to talk to a real artist. They want to feel like a brand cares about them. And especially like Mac, like doesn't just comment on things that happen in our own feed, but like we're going to consumers' feeds and saying like, this is really beautiful, I love this. Like things like that where you're having to actually like go and look at their posts and feeds and react to like when they hashtag you. That's something that like needs to come from a person probably because it has a little bit of personality. I think there's a balance. Machines will get better at that. There's a lot of tools and things that are being developed, but I think that like in terms of a brand having a conversation, really relating to people, that's going to be a little bit easier for a real human to do and somebody at the brand.
Yeah, absolutely. And when it comes to the content and, for example, looking at like third-party content being created and knowing is this going to perform well for our audience and is it going to resonate well or not, do you think this is something that technology could kind of take care of? And would you usually, like if you think, okay, this is content that's going to resonate very well, have there been situations where, you've been entirely wrong or something has been very surprising, or do you tend to know?
No.
Yeah.
I think the more you know your audience, the more you know it's going to work.
Yeah.
At Mac, you can look at the feed and within like a minute of that post going up, you know if it's going to do well or if it's not. And there's certain stuff, like I like to call it the lipstick porn. You're like watching somebody slather on this beautiful gloss and you're mesmerized. Like there's stuff that's going to perform well. There's also things that you're like, well, this is a partnership with somebody or we need to put this post up. It's not going to perform well, but you need to do it because it's part of the business. So finding the balance between like, if we're going to post something that we know is going to be challenging, what else can we drop in there to make sure that we're really like getting people excited as well and keeping the algorithm working for us. So I think that's really important. Knowing your audience, like it's pretty straightforward. If you look at your feed, you can see what people are liking, what they're not liking, and over time, you can tell like, okay, product shots are always going to drive a ton of engagement. Something that's really far away where you can't see somebody's features, not going to, but it might be something that we have to post. So I think that if you know your brand and you really just pay attention to what works well, and always be learning. Like with Fashion Week, it's always an evolution. And you're looking at like, okay, people, they come to Mac for beauty. So when we post something that's like a full model in a really pretty dress, like it's probably not going to perform as well because that's not why they're coming to us. So knowing like what value does my audience find in my feed and really being able to stick to that and continue to grow is important.
Yeah. And what do you think are going to be kind of the key themes during this year for especially beauty brands on social, or key things that we're going to be seeing?
Yeah, I think that interacting with consumers and having an engaging conversation with them is going to continue to be important. I think that we've seen an extreme amount of growth just from engaging more with our consumers and not just on one platform. Like there is this cross-platform, you engage more with somebody on Facebook, like they're gonna go and drive and want to find you on Instagram as well. On even Snapchat, which I know a lot of people don't use a lot anymore, but like we really saw a lot of cross-platform growth from Snapchat to Instagram, and tested out a lot of ways of driving it back and forth. So I think the big theme is just like personalization and engaging with people one-on-one, going to their pages, liking the things that they do, having a conversation. People will reply to our stories and comment like, oh my gosh, I love this. And you just tap that little heart back and their mind is blown. Yeah. Oh my God, MAC Cosmetics replied to me, what? And it's actually pretty cute. But so just like, I think the name of the game is figuring out how do I make my consumers feel, my followers feel special, and constantly be doing that, whatever way it is, whether it's talking back to them, if it's using technology where you don't have to do something active but passively can get them excited, looking for opportunities like that. Just really personalization is going to continue to grow, and making people feel special.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, a thank you can go such a long way on social, especially if it's coming from a brand that you love. So it's very important, And what about the kind of key challenges that you see marketers and especially companies that are active on social media? What do you see for this year being?
I think the homogenization of like just brands, like in beauty specifically, like everything kind of looks the same. Everybody uses the same influencers. And so people kind of begin to lose like, what is the idea of this brand? So really, I think what's a challenge is staying true to your brand, finding the balance between like getting those like big influencers and the bigger conversations going, while still maintaining that brand voice. Because you start looking through a lot of those beauty brands, and the same could be said of like travel or food. Like it all starts to sort of look the same. So figuring out how do I maintain our brand voice, our brand vision in a pretty homogenized. Everything looks the same on Instagram, especially with beauty and like all the contouring. Like it just all looks the same. So how do we do that and keep it true to our brand? And then like growing audiences in an authentic way. MAC never pays for an audience. It's all been organic growth. And I think that there's brands that are tempted to like buy audiences and grow that way, but it begs the question of like how much that consumer believes in your brand and actually wants to follow it. So I think just like building audiences authentically and like really listening to your brand, listening to your consumers to make sure you're giving them what they want to build that like core audience that really believes in you.
Yeah. And then from like a practical standpoint, like what are the kind of best practices or the kind of guidance you can give for how can you do that? Like how can you listen and how can you kind of be producing the content and the products that brands want? Like what's...
Yeah. I think one, don't be afraid to put up a bad post. It doesn't matter. It's literally, it's so ephemeral. You post it, it's there, it's gone. It's dropping out of people's feeds. So don't be afraid. If you get negative feedback, read it and then react moving forward. I think, be nimble, listen to your audience, really listen to them, ask them questions. Like you have that, if somebody sends you something, they're like, I love this post, like, great, thanks. Like ask them a question. They're excited to interact with a brand. If they're following you and they've sent you that, like they're into you. So talk to them, get that conversation going. Try new things, constantly be trying, like, especially in stories or those ephemeral things like that. Like they're here today, gone tomorrow. I think I think Arc Digest does a really good job with this, but like they kind of tease out stories and then they'll drive to their site. They'll be like, guess whose house this is? And they'll be like giving you clues. And I'm always like, who is it? But I always click to swipe up. And I think that like they kind of play games and like have fun with you. Like social media is not a place that you go to like have serious, heavy conversations. So figure out how you like engage in a fun way and a light way with your consumers and ask them questions. There's so many cool things you can do on Facebook, on Instagram, just using like the quizzes and all sorts of things that just make it a little bit more fun. So just have fun with it, I think is really important.
Great. Well, those were great, like final words, having fun with it and just not taking it too seriously. So thank you, Christina, so much for this chat. We're going to be in I think it was the breakout room 2 for a FAQ session, and there's room for 30 people. So please feel free to join us there to continue the conversation. Thank you.